So welcome everybody to the World Ahead 2026 Athens Gala Dinner. I'm Tom Standage, Deputy Editor of The Economist and Editor of The World Ahead. And I'm very pleased to be here in Athens with you all once again. It's been several years I've been doing this now. We have a great programme for you tonight. But before we get to that, I would like to begin by thanking our sponsors. And they are Hanikian Law Firm, PPC, Hellenic Energy, Alba Graduate Business School, and the American College of Greece. So thank you to all of our sponsors. And as is now traditional, I'm going to start the evening's proceedings by taking you through my own top 10. This appears in the World Ahead at the beginning. So this is the 6th year that I've been the editor of the World Ahead, and this is actually the 40th year that we have put this publication together. So we first did this in 1986. I've been involved in it ever since I began at The Economist in 1998. So not whole of that run, but quite a lot of it. And as part of my job as the editor, as well as pulling it all together, I write a summary of what I think are the 10 most important trends and themes each year. And that appears as an editor's letter that looks like this. So I'm going to quickly take you through that right now. So you won't be surprised that what's going on in America is trend number one. What is happening to America? What kind of country does it want to be? Is it on the right track? Where is it heading? This is what everyone around the world is asking themselves, and a lot of Americans are asking themselves too. And this year is America's 250th birthday. It's the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And the celebrations around this are shaping up to be a public manifestation of just how divided America has become. There are two rival organizing committees because Donald Trump didn't like the original one, so he created his own. And there's literally, as part of the celebrations organized by his committee, there is going to be a cage fight, mixed martial arts fighting on the lawn outside the White House. I'm not kidding. And I would say this is a metaphor for American politics right now, but it's not really a metaphor. It's more of a sort of reenactment. Anyway, we will hear wildly diverging accounts of the past, present, and future of America from Republicans and Democrats as they describe the same country in very different terms. But voters will then get to decide which of these visions they prefer when the midterm elections are held in November. And I think there are two big questions for the midterms. The first is, will the Democrats come up with a coherent message? And will they decide there's a particular style, a particular leader that they like the look of? And the second question is whether Donald Trump tries to interfere in the midterm elections because the Republicans are expected to do very badly. And a lot of people are worried that that's the way things are headed now. So I think the midterms will be a litmus test, a barometer that shows where American politics is heading and how far Donald Trump is willing to go towards authoritarianism. In geopolitics more generally, there's been a lot of debate in the past year about the right way to see the world right now. Joe Biden talked of a new Cold War between China and America and their allies. But what does Donald Trump think? Some people think that he believes in a world divided into spheres of influence, where Russia, America, and China all get to do whatever they like in their particular part of the world. And certainly America's actions in Venezuela and its desire to take over Greenland suggest that maybe there's some truth to this theory. But at the same time, America is also still threatening to strike Iran right now, which is outside the the sphere of influence of the Western Hemisphere. So I think the simplest way to explain this is that there is no simple framework, and trying to create one is not going to work. Donald Trump enjoys chaos. It keeps him in the spotlight. And there's a very useful phrase in Washington, which is that Donald Trump's thinking is a mystery, not a secret. There is not a secret plan that we just don't know. There is no plan. It's a mystery, possibly even to Donald Trump himself. So that means we're going to continue to see geopolitical drift and the rules-based order continuing to fragment, and we're going to have more unpredictability coming out of the White House. Okay, on to war and peace. Are we going to have a year of more war or more peace? And the answer is yes. And this is because we hope that the fragile ceasefire in Gaza will hold, but I think the conflict in Ukraine will continue, and in Sudan, and in Myanmar, and elsewhere. But more importantly, I think it's becoming harder and harder to tell the difference between war and peace in a lot of situations. Mark Rutte said recently about NATO and Russia, he said, we're not at war, but we're not at peace either. And I think if you look at the grey area actions that are being taken by Russia in the Baltic Sea or by China in the South China Sea, cutting cables, sabotage, flyovers by drones, this is all sort of plausibly deniable behaviour. It's not an act of war, but it's not peace either. And we're seeing this more and more in the global commons, on the seafloor, in the high seas, in the Arctic, in cyberspace, and in outer space. So it's getting harder and harder to tell whether we are at war or not, because the line between war and peace is becoming very blurry. All of this poses problems for Europe, because Europe has to spend more on defense, boost its economy. It still wants to be an advocate for free trade, but it has to avoid picking a fight with America. It has to keep NATO together. It wants to be an advocate for the climate transition, and it can't do all of these things. So what can it do? Well, it can strike more trade deals, like the new deal with India. There was a deal with Indonesia last year. The Mercosur deal is finally moving forward. And some people say maybe Australia will be next. And the other thing it's probably going to do is deregulation. And we're going to be talking about this very subject later on, because so far, one of the areas it seems to be deregulating in is in energy and climate, with things like the rolling back of the 2035 limit for combustion vehicles. We'll talk about the pros and cons of that approach later on. So this is a problem for Europe, this current chaos, because it's being squeezed from all sides, but it's a huge opportunity for China, because the uncertainty, the unpredictability of American policy means that China can present itself as the adult in the room, the more reliable partner to do business with and to do trade with. And obviously, we've just seen Canada doing this quite limited deal with China over electric cars and agricultural products. But I think we're going to see more of that kind of thing. The British Prime Minister has just been in China, and Britain is doing these sort of small deals of its own as well. And China has done a string of deals with countries across the global south. So this is all good news. The fact that America has become an unreliable partner in geopolitics and trade for many countries is real opportunity for China, and they are seizing it with both hands. Something to watch for is when Donald Trump goes to Beijing in April to meet Xi Jinping. Donald Trump likes to put everything on the table. Business and politics, it's all the same for him. And what's good for American companies and what's good for America as a whole, he just likes to kind of mix these things up. And we are very concerned that in order to guarantee access for American firms to rare earth elements, he might be willing to agree to a reduction in America's support for Taiwan. And I think that's a source of great concern. On to the economy. The US economy and the world economy has been more resilient than most people expected following the imposition of the tariffs. The tariffs, of course, are smaller than they were originally announced, but they still have had an impact, but just not as much as people thought. But there are other concerns for the US economy and for developed economies generally. Many countries, many G7 countries, are running unsustainable fiscal deficits, and there is concern that we could be looking at a bond market crisis in one or more of those countries. So there's a lot of focus on Japan at the moment, which seems to have plans to increase its spending despite its huge debts. Obviously, France has had political paralysis as a result of its efforts to cut the deficit, which haven't gone very well. People are a bit worried about Britain too. And of course, today we have heard who the next head of the Federal Reserve is going to be. And there is concern about the politicization of the Fed because Donald Trump would like interest rates to be much lower. So we may be looking at a showdown between the White House and the Federal Reserve and the bond markets later this year. But that's not the only possible cause of a financial crisis. And we are, by the way, overdue for a financial crisis. We last had a recession towards the end of the 2000s. So we are in a recession. And we are also in a bubble because so many people are talking about the AI share prices being a bubble. And I think they are too high. And I think we will see a correction of some kind this year. The revenue and the adoption of AI are simply not there, given the extremely frothy valuations we are seeing for these companies. The adoption of technology always takes longer than people think. And I say this as somebody who believes that AI is genuinely transformative technology. But what we've seen with previous technologies like the railways, electricity, and the internet is that the path to mass adoption of those technologies, where they really change the world, very often involves lots of ups and downs, lots of booms and busts on the way. And I expect that to happen with AI. There's also growing concern about the impact of AI on jobs. Whether or not the share prices are up or down, people are worried about whether it's harder for young people to find jobs in particular. On to climate, and it's a mixed picture. It's clear that we're going to miss the 1.5-degree target of the Paris Agreement. That will become apparent this year. And greenery generally has been pushed down the agenda because of the unpredictability of American policy. And it means that companies and governments spend their time reacting to that, and they have less time to deal with long-term challenges like climate change. But actually, under the surface, there's quite a lot of good news. We are now probably at peak global emissions. China's emissions have been falling for the last year or so, and they are going to cut their emissions by 7 to 10% in the next decade. And in fact, China traditionally underpromises and overdelivers on its climate goals. China has already met many of its climate goals for 2035, 10 years too early. So I think we are going to see emissions going down over the next decade. And more generally, there is a clean tech boom happening across the global south as a result of cheap Chinese clean tech. Of course, that cheap Chinese clean tech is very dangerous if you are a producer of the same goods like the European car industry. But if you're not, then it's very good news because it gives you cheap and reliable electricity. Okay, on to sport. We can always rely on sport to cheer us up and give us a break from politics and bring the world together, right? Well, there may be a problem in 2026 because the Football World Cup is being jointly hosted by America, Mexico, and Canada, and they are not getting on very well right now. Canada is in the process of assembling a policy for what to do, a response plan, if they're invaded across the southern border by the United States. The United States is threatening airstrikes on Mexico to hit drug gangs. So this is going to be an interesting tournament with tension on the pitch and off. And of course, those three countries have to renegotiate their trade deal as well this year. But the other tournament that I'm interested in this year is what's called the Doping Olympics. The enhanced games. These are happening in Las Vegas in May. And the odd thing about them is the athletes are actually encouraged to take drugs to improve their performance. And there are prizes on offer if they can beat world records in swimming and sprinting using drugs. And this is intensifying the debate over whether taking drugs in sport is cheating or just a different kind of sport. And that brings us finally to drugs of a different kind, the weight loss drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy and Mounjaro and all the rest of them. New and better drugs are coming this year, so get ready to learn some new names. There are going to be drugs that you only have to take once a month instead of once a week. drugs that are much cheaper because the patents are expiring in many countries. And there are also going to be pill versions of this drug. So you can just have a pill in the morning instead of having to inject yourself. And this is going to expand access of these drugs around the world, which is very good news because they have a lot of benefits aside from just weight reduction and diabetes management. They have a lot of other health benefits. But it will intensify the debate over whether this too counts as cheating, because a lot of people think that losing weight using drugs is sort of not fair, and you should go on a diet, and you shouldn't be allowed to take them. You shouldn't be allowed to use them as a lifestyle drug. There's a lot of debate about this. So this has extended the debate about the ethics, the pros and cons of performance-enhancing drugs from the world of sport, where it's been going on for a long time, to everybody. Most people don't get to participate in the Olympic Games, but we can all play in the Ozempic Games. Anyway, these are my 10 themes for this year. You can read all about all of them in the Greek edition of The World Ahead, which you all have a copy of. And also, this is going to be included tomorrow in Tainea, I think it is, the newspaper. There's going to be a copy of it in there as well. So I wish you the best of luck in navigating the uncertainty of the coming year. And I hope that whether you believe in performance-enhancing drugs or not, you will find The World Ahead 2026 to be a valuable and nutritional supplement to your media diet. Thank you very much for listening. Okay, my next job is to introduce the table quiz. So there is a quiz, and there's a sheet on every table where you can give your answers, and there will be prizes at the end of the evening for the table that does the best job. Now, if you were listening carefully, the answers to many of the questions were contained in my remarks just now, and the answers to all of the others are inside the World Ahead 2026, if you know where to look. So please look in there rather than just looking things up on your phone. And you can see there's a whole load. Yeah, we have the questions on there as well. Yes, I won't go through them on the screen. But yes, I hope you will participate in that.